There's more in this series. I'm using the same fundamental diagram. It's fundamental because it sets the base and building on it into other realms. I ask for your understanding about my using the whiteboard. It's sometimes difficult to see the letters. I do my best to speak clearly and give you the whole story and refer to this whiteboard as a framework to hold together our discussion and to make sense of the information so that you can understand it better. This one again is very simple. I'm using the progression that I've done before of stages, and I've got a vertical axis and I've got a horizontal axis. So let's dive in. The title is this: Christianity and its necessary development beyond the cross to the tree of life civilization. Some of you may know that Jesus is referred to as the tree of life, and the tree of life is Adam's original position that he was meant to fulfill, that he didn't. Let's dive in. So I'm going to start over here in a realm of chaos, which is on the horizontal axis. Chaos meaning anarchy or whatever you want, human disorder, total disorder, cannibalism, abuse, pedophilia, all the horrible things that go to pieces, rip apart families and civilizations. That's there. Then we go through the pre-Old Testament. Pre-Old Testament. Many people may not understand this, but in the Bible there's a lot of information about pre-Old Testament. For example, before Moses gave the 10 Commandments and the Hebrews had migrated from Egypt, before that time in the desert when he gave the 10 Commandments, they were in the pre-Old Testament existence. So the pre-Old Testament, then we go from there into the Old Testament, which is the 10 Commandment world. Then after that we have the New Testament, which is summarized, Jesus says, with his 2 commandments. Then I have what I call the Advanced Testament, which is, I'm using this word for the first time with you, Jesus' curriculum, which I have written up into a book which will soon be published, the whole thing of Jesus' curriculum, which will include most of the material I've been sharing with you. Chaos, pre-Old Testament, Old Testament, New Testament, and the Advanced Testament. Now, I've got here a quote from Genesis that there was a cherub with a flashing sword which prevented and blocked people's access to the tree of life. Prevented Adam and Eve from getting through after they broke God's first commandment. So over this end of the diagram is God's direct sovereignty, which is the tree of life, and his original 3 blessing culture. And this is meant to start with the Messiah. And it's a sphere of truth, life and love, and it expresses the original ideal. So that is what is awaiting us. That is the promise and the ideal set up in the first 2 books of Genesis in the Bible. Now over here we've got, as we mentioned, chaos, which means we're going deeper into hell, deeper into disorder, deeper into anarchic, exploitative and damaging situations. And this is the world of the tree of the knowledge good and evil, which is that fallen angel sovereignty. And it's when in the Bible it talks about the sin of the first parents was eating the fruit of the tree of the knowledge good and evil, which equals death of the ideal. Now, well, let's go through this progression, because then you're going to understand how it is that Christianity must necessarily develop beyond the cross. Pre-Old Testament, we have eye for eye, tooth for tooth, claw for claw. This is also found in Islam, communism, and militant atheism. These 3 systems are based entirely on exploitation of others. Now, the 10 Commandments, which is the Old Testament system, progresses 10, 9, 8, there's all 10 of them, right? And there's a hierarchy. The first one is about God's sovereignty, the first commandment. Second, having no false gods, and so on and so forth. Interestingly enough, the fifth commandment is thou shalt not murder. Murder is a very serious crime, and yet that is the cross, is the murder of an innocent. So to kill Jesus, the Jewish leaders of the time had to break the Mosaic law. They actually had to break the 10 commandments. They had to break the fifth commandment to kill Jesus. Very few people realize that. That is exactly what they did. He was innocent. In fact, he was so innocent that the Romans couldn't find anything wrong with him, so they just beat him up and then carried on their sentence, but they didn't have any reason to condemn him. It was all pushed ironically, from the side of the Old Testament leaders. Now, Jesus' 2 commandments are not the end of the story, because the Christians apparently for 2,000 years have been practicing the 2 commandments, but they haven't got to God's direct sovereignty, the tree of life's original blessing or anything. They can't get past the line of the fall or the cherub with the flashing sword. There's a spiritual barrier that blocks people from getting into the ideal world. Let's explore that. So God's first commandment, which is in Genesis 2:17, instructs Adam and Eve to not eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge good and evil. Have you ever considered that commandment still stands? It's never been rescinded. It is still in operation. But since most of humankind is struggling and messing around down here, people don't have any notion of the higher level of commitment, responsibility, truth and attendance that's required of them to fulfill their purpose. This is why we have to have more teaching beyond the line of the cross, beyond Jesus' 2 commandments, back to the first one. This is the unique human responsibility which was invested in us at the very beginning of human history, and I call this the zone of transition from the Christian world, the realms of religions, philosophies and ideologies, and moral progress. Past the New Testament, there is a zone of transition of unique human responsibility. We have to figure out how to keep the first commandment, do not eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge good and evil, because if you do, you're back into the business of confusion. You're heading deeper into hell, into these realms, if you break that there. And yet that's the one that we're always breaking, because we believe in things that aren't true. We follow ideas and systems which are not God-centered. We live in compromise, we live in conflict, we live in scandal, and we live in disbelief and all kinds of nonsense. And that proves that this is not being met by human behavior. And yet on the other side of it is waiting the tree of life and all the other blessings. The cherub with the flashing sword can only block those who are in violation of the first commandment. If you're in accordance with the first commandment, obviously you're in accordance with Jesus' 2 commandments, and you've already graduated from the 10 commandments school of Moses, way back here. Am I making sense? Or am I a raving madman? You have to figure that out. It's not my problem. I know where I am in all this. I discovered this. It was brought to me, so I figured it out. And you can too. I'm giving it to you in black and white, well, in purple, red, green. It's all here in full colour on the whiteboard. So this business here is absolutely fascinating to me, because this is the final stages of Christian promise. We can't get out of Christian historical fact, until we face the fact that we murdered Jesus. An absolute crime. And we have to repent for that and go beyond it, because he would instruct us, if we repent for that, about the next thing, which is this tree of the knowledge good and evil, that business. So on the other side of that, we become people of substantial truth, life and love, living within the tree of life civilization and the original ideal. I've laid this out before you. I hope that it makes sense. I've done my best to put a lot of information in front of you in a very simple format, which you can then digest and incorporate for yourself in your own life. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you every blessing on your way to the heavenly kingdom.